Here's why we should return to oneness. What does oneness mean? Oneness means going back to the state of our minds being at one. It means going back to the place where we no longer see life through the realm of duality. We no longer see life as having an objective good or evil. We simply see life in the mind of oneness. Well, how can we get back to oneness? What does that mean? Well, basically oneness, from my understanding, is basically a state of being. You don't go back to oneness, you just look at everything that separates you from oneness. Well, what separates us from oneness? Well, for the most part, the ego. The ego is the main benefactor in what separates us from oneness. Why is that? Because the ego is where we create our own identification. These are not identifications that existed within us when we were first born. They were labels that are slowly put on us over the time of our lives. We're given a name, we're told where we live, we're told our nationality, we're told all these things about who we are, and then we die, and then they cease to exist. But for some reason, we're so able to spend our lives in a period of time believing that these aspects and elements of the ego are who we are, but they're not. They're made up. They're imaginary. Everything that is outside of oneness is imaginary. The world as we see it, the creation of society, the creation of existence in its current form, this is all made up. Everything, my studio, it's all just made up. It's all going to come to an end at some point, and that's not to bring a morbidity to the situation, that's just to bring a reality to it. At the end of the day, in some 100 years or so, none of what's here now is likely going to be existing in the future. Oneness is stepping into that space of no ego. You know, everybody says lose the ego, but then they still say it from a space of ego. Ego is so tricky because even the people who think they have no ego tend to have the biggest of egos. The ego loves to protect itself within its own box of ego. But then how do you get rid of the ego? Well, that's the slow process of the return to oneness. Truly, we can't solve the problems that we're in the same mind that created them. And if the same mind that created all our problems has to do with the ego and our current state of reality and perpetuating our current state of reality, then we're never going to escape the pattern that we are currently stuck in. The only way to escape the pattern is to ascend. It's to see things from a higher perspective, to see things with a different mind. For example, if you're stuck in a mental box, if you're stuck in an idea of who you are, until you're able to see yourself outside of that box, you will continue to think of yourself inside that box. Well, how do you get outside of the box? You have to ascend from the box. You have to be outside of it. You have to literally see yourself from a state of awareness rather than the state of who you are in your ego. Your ego is constantly evolving. Your ego is constantly forming. The ego is modified by the outer world, by the behaviors of others, by what others say to you, by responses that you get for certain things that you say or do. The ego is very fragile, and the ego will tend to mold depending on what the outer world wants from it. But oneness doesn't change. Oneness is who you are at your core. Oneness isn't told to you by the world. Oneness isn't defined for you by anybody other than yourself. Oneness brings you back to the fractal, brings you back to the unified consciousness that we all started as, that we all still are, but we've just forgotten. Oneness is what we have to return to in order to find peace. Oneness is where we have to go in order to bring the world back into unity, to bring ourselves back into unity. It's a process. It's a process of looking at the ego. It's the process of looking at what you believe to be true only to release it, in order to step back into a space of innocence, in order to step back into that space of being one with nature, being one with existence. There is no overthinking in oneness. There is no thinking that we can do it better as humans than as our pure natural form and state, in connection to the source, in connection to God, in connection to the true creation of what we exist in. We cannot do this better than what is already within us. For us to think that we can do it better puts us in a mental box, has us believing in our own sense of knowledge, has us believing that we as humans are the intelligent ones rather than us gathering our intelligence from the infinite source. We're not that smart. And until we accept that, until we just kind of accept that maybe the way things are isn't really working, maybe we're just going to continue to create that, because we are creators. We are creative beings. We are beings with creative potential that stems from our minds. And until we learn how to take control of our minds and how to take proper ownership for our own personal creative abilities, we're going to keep creating the same. And that's sad and that sucks, but it's also exciting because it presents an opportunity. It presents an opportunity for us to step into something better, to step into something more. But I can't force anybody to do that. I can't force anybody to show up to anything. I can't force people to show up for themselves. I can't force people to take responsibility for their own lives, and that is not my responsibility. My responsibility is to take responsibility for my own life. That's what I'm here to do. And I'm learning every day. Every day I'm learning something new. I go through my peaks, I go through my valleys, but every peak offers me something as well as every valley. That's the process of grace. That's the process of acceptance. It's the process of going with the flow, allowing what happens to happen, and knowing that everything that comes your way is to serve your highest good. It's not easy to get there. Getting to a place of acceptance is about understanding your mind. It's about knowing that if something is bothering you, it's because you needed to be bothered in order to rise above it. You needed to be bothered in order to gain the strength to take on whatever's next. Because life has a lot to throw in our way. Life is going to constantly give us situations and scenarios that we're going to have to get over. We're going to have to work together on it. We're going to have to bring ourselves back to that space of oneness. I honestly, at this point, what more is there to do other than to throw the challenge your way? Are you ready to take responsibility for your life? Are you ready to actually look at the things in your life that don't serve you in order to get back to a space of taking responsibility for your thoughts and your actions and really taking control of the infinite creator that you truly are? That's what I'm doing here. That's my goal. I challenge you to do the same. Can't tell you what to do. I'm not going to force you. But I know from experience that taking control of your life is the best thing you can do for yourself. It's not always going to be easy, but at the very least, you get to make decisions knowing that what you're deciding is within your highest good. It's for your highest purpose. It's for your highest benefit. And allowing that to change is also important, but continuing to take responsibility for your actions rather than putting the blame on everybody else is how we as people, one at a time, return to that space of oneness, that space of awareness, that space of true self-awareness and self-accountability. In order for us to ascend, in order for us to rise, we have to take responsibility for our own ascension. No one's coming to save us. No one's gonna magically appear and tell you, hey, this way. I mean, you can kind of say I'm doing that in some ways, but I'm not the first. I know how much taking responsibility for ourselves is important in the world going forward. I know how vital it is for us to work together, to discuss, to co-create, to step into that space of unity and create a world that's peaceful, that's in harmony with one another, that has us all lifting each other up rather than tearing each other down. Because from experience, a life of service to others is much better than a life of service to oneself. And you'll soon realize that in service to others, it is actually the same as service to the self. And that is the tricky paradox of oneness, is the person across from you is no different from you. I'm no different to you. If anything frustrates you, bring it to the comments. Let's discuss. Let's talk about unity. Let's talk about oneness. Let's talk about ascending, and let's talk about actually rising above the situation in service to one another. That's this video. My name's Aiden. This is Studio Raphael. We are here to heal. We are here to ascend. We are here to rise above old patterns, to connect, to unify, to discover, to create, and to dive deeper into our infinite minds in order to explore our potential as human beings. And even more, to explore our potential as conscious beings. Because while yes, we are human in this form, there's infinite. Thanks for being here. Thanks for taking the time to listen to what I had to share with you today. I hope you got something out of that. And yeah, let's just continue to grow, continue to build, continue to rise above it. And we're going to get there slowly but surely. So thanks, all the best, and hopefully I'll see you around the studio sometime. Take care.